All right, this is going to be section 5, and we are going to be doing the operations for complex numbers. If you look on page 16, it gives you our standards. You're going to be able to add and subtract and multiply the complex numbers, which we're going to be doing the same thing you're used to seeing, except it's going to be with I. All right? So we're going to go ahead and simplify these. You may be used to seeing something like 4x plus 7x minus 17x. Well, we're going to do the same thing. The only thing is our variable is different because that I does represent something, all right, as you have seen before with the graphs. So I'm just going to combine like terms. That is something that you're familiar with hearing. I'm going to combine like terms. So 4 plus 7 is 11i minus 17i, and then I'm going to take 11 minus 17, and it gives me negative 6i. All right? The next one, it's the same thing. I'm just going to have to distribute my negative to everything that's in parentheses. Okay? It's just like whenever you have a negative out front, the signs are going to change. So I'm going to take my 13i and I'm going to leave it. Well, negative times a positive gives me a negative 5. Negative times a negative gives me a positive. So I have 28i. Now I can combine like terms. So negative 13i plus 28i is 15i. And then I have nothing to combine with the 5, so I'm just going to have negative 5. Now, anytime I write these, this is my real number, this is my imaginary number because it has an I with it. Remember, we talked about that in class and even in the previous section. But my real number always comes first. Always first. Okay? So my real number is always first. My imaginary number is always second. Now, if I happen not to have a real number, it's okay. You don't have to worry about that, all right? So now, if we look at the next one, there's nothing to combine, but we need to remember our pattern. So, remember the pattern. Which is I, negative 1, negative I, and 1. All right? We know that this is I to the first, I squared, I cubed, and I to the fourth. So we cannot end with anything over an I. We're going to have to simplify it, okay? So 2 times I squared is negative 1, plus 6I cubed is negative I, and then I to the fourth is 1. Now, just so you know where I got this, I just switched these over to what their values are. Okay? That's all I did. So now I'm going to take and multiply. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 6 times negative I is negative 6I. And then 2 times 1, negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Now I can combine like terms. My like terms are negative 2, negative 2. When I add 2 negatives together, I will get negative 4. And this is going to end up being just a negative 6i. If you want to leave it in the parentheses and do plus the negative 6i, you can. But just know that it's going to be negative 6i. All right. So then, if we look at the next one, we have like terms that we can combine. They become 5i cubed. We just add the front. Because they're not being multiplied or nothing, we keep the variable and the exponent that is there. Then minus 7i. Now, I cubed is negative I. All right, and we're going to have 5 minus 7i. All right, so 5 times negative I is going to be negative 5i minus 7i. So negative 5 minus 7 is negative 12, and we keep the I. And that is our answer. All right, this one looks scary, but I promise it's not that bad. We're going to do what we've been doing. We're going to see if there's anything that we can combine. So if we look, we have 8 squared, or I squared. We have 2 of them. So negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5I squared. So that makes it already look smaller. Then we don't have a fourth, so I can bring that down. So 2I to the fourth. Next, I'm going to look and see if I have another I. I have negative 6I, negative 7, so negative 6 minus 7 is negative 13I. And then I don't have anything left to go with the I cubed, so I'm going to leave it 7I cubed. Now, remember our pattern. Negative 5I squared is a negative 1 plus 2. Then I to the fourth is 1 minus 13. And I is just I, so we're going to leave it. Minus 7. And then I cubed is negative I. Now I'm going to take and multiply these out. So, negative 5 times negative 1 is 5. 2 times 1, 2 times 1 is 2. Then minus 13, I, and then a negative 7 and a negative I gives me a positive 7I. Now I can combine like terms. So 5 plus 2 is 7. Negative 13 plus 7 is going to end up being a negative 6, and then I have my I. All right, and that is my answers for those. So we're going to go ahead and practice some of these, a few more of these. If you want to try these by yourself, pause the video, try them, and then you can log back, or you can start it back and see if you get the same answers that I do. So for this one, I'm going to distribute the negative. So I end up with 4I minus 2 minus 7I. And then I'm going to combine like terms. So 4 minus 7 is 3I. Then I keep the 2, but I've got to write this in the right way. Sorry, that's negative 3. I've got to write this in the right way, so I'm going to end up with negative 2 minus 3I. Okay? Now, do not let the parentheses scare you. They do nothing unless there's a negative out front. So this is not going to change. I'm going to have 3I minus 6. This one's not going to change. So plus 4 minus 7I. Now this one, I've just got to distribute that negative. So everything inside parentheses, the sign's going to change. So minus 8 minus I. Now, remember, one thing that I want you to look at is anytime you have a variable that stands by itself like this, there is still a 1 in front of it, okay? It's just like if it was X there, okay? So now I'm going to combine like terms. I have 3I, negative 7, negative 1. So 3 minus 7 is negative 4, minus 1 is negative 5I. All right, then I have negative 6 plus 4, which is negative 2, minus 8, which is negative 10. And if you need to put that in your calculator, you can. It's all right. All right, 6 minus 8 minus 5. I need to distribute that negative. So I'm going to end up with 6 minus 8 plus 6 times 5. Or sorry, the negative is what I'm distributing, not the 6. So that's plus 5I. Now combine like terms, which is right there. 6 minus 8 is negative 2, and I have nothing to combine the I with, so I'm going to leave it 5I. Now this one is just like before. Don't let the parentheses scare you. 4I plus 5, that's going to stay the same. The negative will change my signs here and here. So I have minus 3 minus 6I. Again, I have a negative again, so it's going to change my signs. So minus 6I minus 2. Now I'm going to go ahead and combine my whole numbers because that's what's going to go first. So 5 minus 3, that gives me 2. And then 2 minus 2 gives me 0. So I do not have to worry about that one, okay? I have no whole number. Next, I have 4 minus 6. That's going to give me a negative 2. So I have negative 2i. And then I'm going to subtract 6, so minus 6i. That's going to end up giving me negative 8i. Now, if you want the 0 there as a placeholder for the whole number, go ahead. That's perfectly fine. It doesn't bother me. But if you don't need it, then you don't have to use it either. All right. So that is with the adding and subtracting. We're going to go ahead and do the multiplying as well. All right. So when we multiply, anytime there's something in parentheses, whatever's outside that parentheses, we're going to distribute to it, okay? To everything in the parentheses. So we're going to distribute the 4i, the whole thing, to the whole thing in the parentheses. So 4 times 7 is 28. I times I is I squared. Now, I can't leave it I squared. I've got to go back to my pattern. And I squared is going to be negative 1. So 28 times negative 1 is going to end up giving me negative 28. Okay? Now I'm going to distribute my 10 to my 3i. So 10 times 3 is 30, and I have I, and there's nothing to change there. All right? 9 times 4 is 36. I times I is I squared. Again, I squared is negative 1, so I'm going to end up with negative 36. All right? And then 6 times 8 is 48. I'm working with 1i, so I don't have to worry about changing anything there either. All right, so let's go ahead and do these 4. These are a little more in them. It's okay. You can still do it. You're still doing the same thing. You're distributing. So I'm going to do the top 2. Pause the video if you need to copy it, because I'm going to erase it so I can move the bottom 2 up and have room to do the work for those. So the first one, I'm going to distribute my 4i to everything. So 4 times 3 is 12, and that's an I. 4 times 8 is 32. I times I is I squared. Now, remember the pattern, and I'll write it at the top here. I, negative 1, negative I, 1. I squared is negative 1. So 32 times negative 1. Don't forget there's a negative there because it's being subtracted. So this is going to give me a positive 32. Now, I need to write this the correct way. My imaginary number goes last. My real number goes first. So it'll be 32 plus 12i. All right, this next one you can use the box method or the FOIL method. I'm going to do, since I have 2, I'm going to do each of them. That way you can see both ways, and you can use which one works best for you. I typically use the FOIL method. It just means first, outside, inside, last. So the first ones in parentheses I multiply, then the outside ones, then the inside, and then the last. That's all that means. That's what FOIL stands for. So 2 times 7 is 14. I times I is I squared. Then I'm going to do 2 times negative 8, so negative 16i. Then negative 5 times 7 is negative 35i. Negative 5 times negative 8 is a positive 40. Now I can combine like terms. So I have 14i squared. And then negative 16 minus 35 is a negative 51i plus 40. All right, I need to get rid of that I squared. So I know I squared is a negative 1. And then just put everything in there. So negative 14 times negative 1 gives me negative 14 minus 51i plus 40. Now I can combine like terms. So negative 14 plus 40 is going to give me 26. And then I don't have anything to combine that 51i with, so I'm going to leave it like that. Now, this is the part, if you want to copy this, go ahead and pause the video, because I'm going to erase it so I have room to move the bottom 2 up. All right. All right, so for this one, I'm just going to distribute my 2i. So 2 times negative 7 is negative 14i. 2 times 6 is 12, and then I times I is I squared. Now, we know we've got to get rid of that I squared, so that's 12 times negative 1. And then 14i can stay right there for right now. 12 times negative 1 is negative 12. Now, this is not written right. We need to fix that. So it's going to end up being negative 12 minus 14i. Okay, on this one, I'm going to use the box method. It's the exact same way. If you like foiling, you can go ahead and foil. If you like the box method, by all means, use the box method, just so long as you get the right answer. Then we're good. All right, so with the box method, I'm going to take this term and I'm going to put it on top or to the side. I'm not going to separate those two terms. I'm going to keep them together, so they're going to go together either on the top or they're going to go together on the side. So I'm going to put them on the top, so 6i and 7. Then I'm going to take and do 3 and negative 8 in the place that I did not use the first one. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply. So 3 times 6 is 18i. 6 times negative 8 is negative 48i squared. 3 times 7 is 21. And then 7 times negative 8 is negative 56i. Now, this is where I always combine my like terms, just like I did in the other one when I foiled it. But they're always going to be diagonal from each other, so that way you know which ones that you can use, or which ones go together. They're always going to be diagonal. Now, I'm always going to start out with my highest exponent to go first when I'm labeling these out. So I have 40 of negative 48 I squared, and then 18 minus 56, so negative 38i plus 21. Now, I need to get rid of that I squared, so we know that that is a negative 1. Hopefully by now we know. Minus 38i plus 21. Now, negative times a negative gives me a positive, so 48 minus 38i plus 21. I need to combine like terms, so 48 plus 21 is going to be 69 minus 38i. So that is those. Now, on the next part, the next 4, if you want to pause the video, try them, come back, and I'll tell you what I have, and you can see if you've got it or not. So I'm going to distribute the 7i to everything. So 7 times 4 is 28i. 9, or negative 9 times 7 is 63, and that is I squared. Got to get rid, and I'm going to write the little thing here. I've got to get rid of that I squared, so it says 28 minus 63 times a negative 1. Negative and negative, sorry, I left my I off. Negative and a negative is a positive, but I still need to write this correctly. So 63 plus 28i. All right, the next one, foil or box, whichever one you like. But 5i times I is 5i squared. 5 times 6 is a positive 30i. Negative 3 times I is a minus 3i. And negative 3 times 6 is a negative 18. All right, So I've got to get rid of this negative, or this I squared. We know that's a negative. Combine my like terms. So 30 minus 3 is 27 minus 18. So I'm going to have negative 5 plus 27i minus 18. Now, combine my like terms again. Negative 5 minus 18 is a negative 23 plus 27i. All right. On this one, I'm just going to distribute my 2. So 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. 2 times 3i is 6i. Pretty easy for that one. All right, this one, 3 and 7 are 21i. 3 and 5 is a negative 15i squared. 2 and 7 is a 14. And 2 and negative 5 is a negative 10i. Now, I want to combine like terms, which is 21 and negative 10. And that is going to end up being 11i plus 14. And then this has to be gotten rid of. So negative 15 times a negative 1, which is what the I squared is. Negative times a negative gives me a positive. So 15. Now I need to combine like terms. So 15 plus 14 is 29 plus 11i. Now, if you did not get any of those answers, or if you're not understanding where I got those answers from, please ask in class. If you have any questions about what's going on, don't hesitate to ask me. I will be glad to help you.